The last time anyone saw her alive, it was supposed to be an ordinary night. A week before Christmas, a 12-year-old girl sat in her home with her younger brother, completely unaware that someone was already making their way toward the house. The person approaching wasn't a stranger, at least not entirely. She was connected to someone the family knew, and because of that connection, the door would be opened without hesitation. What happened after that became one of the most horrifying events I have ever been close to, and even now, years later, there are details I still wish I had never learned. I moved in with my dad when I was 10 years old. Everything about my life changed almost overnight. New neighborhood, new school, new people. I didn't know anyone in the area except for one family my dad was friends with. It was a single mother raising 3 children on her own. Out of all of them, I got along best with her daughter. She was about 2 years older than me, 12 when we first met. We weren't inseparable friends or anything like that, but over the next couple of years our lives naturally crossed paths. We shared mutual friends, attended some of the same gatherings, and spent enough time around each other that she became a familiar part of my world. She was just one of those people you assumed would always be around. Nobody could have imagined how quickly that would change. The girl's mother worked hard to support her children and was known for helping people whenever she could. Through her job, she had become acquainted with another woman who was going through a difficult period in her life. The two spoke often, and over time the mother learned more about the woman's family situation. One detail stood out. The woman had a sister who had spent time in a mental institution. Recently, that sister had been released. At the time, it sounded like nothing more than background information. Nobody treated it as a warning sign. Nobody had any reason to think it mattered. But looking back, that detail feels like the first crack in a story that would eventually shatter everything. The night it happened was cold and quiet. Christmas was only days away, and most families in the neighborhood were focused on decorations, gifts, and holiday plans. The atmosphere should have felt warm and comforting. Instead, it became the setting for a nightmare. That evening, one of my friends, Rob, was hanging out at the girl's house. Her younger brother was there too. The 3 of them had the place to themselves because their mother was at work. For kids their age, it wasn't unusual. A few hours of freedom, television, conversation, just another ordinary night. At some point, a knock sounded at the door. Nothing about it seemed alarming. In fact, the girl immediately assumed it was her mother returning home. Apparently, her mom had a particular way of knocking, something recognizable enough that nobody thought twice about it. Without suspicion, the door was answered. The moment it opened, everything changed. Rob wasn't technically supposed to be there that night. The second he thought an adult had arrived, he panicked and slipped out through a window before anyone could question him. He ran back toward his own house down the road. To him, it was a completely forgettable moment. Years later, he would realize it had probably saved his life. The person standing outside wasn't the children's mother. It was the recently released sister. Somehow, through conversations with her own sister, she had learned where the family lived. She knew who they were. More importantly, she knew the mother's work schedule. She knew the children would likely be alone. Nobody knows exactly what she was thinking as she approached that house. Nobody can fully explain why she chose that family. Whatever answers existed disappeared with her actions that night. What is known is that she was invited inside. No struggle, no forced entry, just a door opening to someone who shouldn't have been there. The house that had felt safe only moments earlier suddenly became a trap. And somewhere down the road, Rob was already heading home, completely unaware that he had just escaped a situation that would soon become the worst tragedy our community had ever seen. What happened after the woman entered the house remains fragmented in my memory. Part of that is because I was never there. The other part is because some details were too horrific for adults to discuss openly around children. Even now, I only know pieces of the story. The younger brother would eventually become one of the most important witnesses to what happened. At some point during the chaos, he managed to get away from the woman and flee the house. Imagine that moment. A child running through the darkness, terrified, heart pounding so hard it drowns out every other sound. Houses passing in a blur, barely able to breathe, knowing only one thing. He had to find help. He made it to a neighbor's house and called the police. That decision likely saved his own life. Meanwhile, inside the home, the situation continued to spiral into something unthinkable. Police would later arrive to a scene that shocked even experienced investigators. The holiday season made everything feel even more disturbing. Christmas decorations were still up. Gifts had already been wrapped. Plans had already been made for the following week. All of it stopped in a single night. As news spread through the neighborhood, confusion quickly turned into disbelief. People asked the same questions over and over. Why this family? Why these children? How had something so terrible happened in such an ordinary place? Nobody seemed to have answers. The closer Christmas came, the heavier the atmosphere became. What should have been a season filled with excitement transformed into one dominated by fear and grief. Parents held their children a little tighter. Doors were locked more carefully. Every unfamiliar face suddenly felt suspicious. The entire community was trying to process something that didn't make sense. For me, the story became impossible to escape. Even though we hadn't been especially close, she had still been part of my life. I had known her, talked to her, shared friends with her, and now she was gone. Not because of an accident, not because of illness, but because someone had deliberately walked into her home and taken everything away. The realization was difficult to comprehend then. Honestly, it still is. As investigators worked through the case, more details slowly emerged. Each new fact seemed darker than the last. The woman responsible was identified as the same recently released sister connected to the family through the mother's work. Authorities pieced together how she had learned where the family lived and how she had known when the children would likely be alone. The attack wasn't random in the sense that she had simply stumbled upon the house. She had information. She had chosen the time. That realization terrified people. There is something uniquely unsettling about knowing that danger wasn't lurking in the shadows by chance. It had arrived with purpose. The police investigation moved quickly, but no amount of arrests or paperwork could undo what had happened. For those of us connected to the victim, life suddenly divided itself into two parts. Before that night, and after it, I remember hearing adults talk in lowered voices whenever the case came up. Conversations would stop when children entered the room. Faces tightened, eyes drifted downward. Nobody wanted to repeat the details. Nobody wanted to imagine what those children had experienced during those final moments inside the house. The younger brother survived, but survival doesn't erase trauma. The mother had left for work expecting to return home to her children. Instead, she returned to a scene that no parent should ever have to face. Even now, thinking about that reality is difficult. Christmas lights still glowed from porches around town. Holiday music still played in stores. Life continued moving forward. Yet for one family, time had effectively stopped. Sometimes tragedies become news stories for a few days before disappearing. This wasn't like that. People remembered. They talked about it years later. Not because of rumors or sensationalism, but because everyone struggled to understand how something so evil could emerge from something as simple as answering a knock at the door. One familiar sound, one assumption, one decision made without fear, and an entire future vanished. The part that stays with me most isn't the crime scene. It isn't the investigation. It isn't even the headlines that followed. It's the memory of who she was before any of that happened. When you're young, tragedy feels distant. You hear stories on television and assume terrible things happen somewhere else to people you've never met. Then one day, it happens close enough to touch, close enough to have a name, close enough that you can picture the person's face. I can still remember her as the girl I met after moving to my dad's house. A little older than me, familiar, normal, someone who was simply part of the neighborhood. Nothing about her life suggested it would end that way. Nothing about that December evening seemed destined for disaster. Yet a week before Christmas, everything changed. The woman who entered the house murdered my friend. The crime shocked everyone who learned about it and left scars that extended far beyond the immediate family. The younger brother survived because he escaped and found help. Police arrived, but by then the damage had already been done. For a long time afterward, I struggled with the fact that there were pieces of the story I would never fully know. Maybe that's for the best. Some details aren't meant to be carried forever. I do know one thing, though. The loss rippled through everyone connected to her. Friends, neighbors, classmates, parents, even people who barely knew her felt the weight of it. When the funeral was held, I wasn't allowed to attend. Looking back, I understand why. The adults were trying to protect me from something they knew I wasn't ready to process. But not going created its own kind of sadness. There was no goodbye, no final moment of closure, just the knowledge that someone I had known was suddenly gone. Years have passed since then, but every Christmas I find myself thinking about that family. I think about the younger brother running for help, I think about a mother finishing her shift, unaware her life was about to be shattered. And I think about a 12-year-old girl who opened a door because she believed her mother was home. A simple knock, a familiar sound, and a tragedy that none of us would ever forget.